Imagine for a second, just picture this scenario. Two highly successful executives walk into a boardroom. They don't have a working product to show. They don't have a single line of code written. They definitely don't have any users. All they really have is a pitch deck and a grand theory about the future of consumer behavior. And yet they walk out of that room with a blank check from the world's most powerful banks, studios, and tech giants. I am talking about a mountain of cash so massive it could literally fund a small country's entire infrastructure, almost $2 billion, handed over on a silver platter. By all traditional financial metrics, the company they were building was deemed too big to fail before it even launched. It was hailed by insiders as the absolute, undisputed future of media and technology, a guaranteed slam dunk. But then, the money just vanished. And I don't mean it slowly bled out over a decade of pivots, layoffs, and quiet restructuring like a normal startup. No, it evaporated in a flash. We are talking about an entire empire built from scratch and then completely dismantled and destroyed in the time it takes a seasonal apple to ripen on a tree. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to unravel the absolute mystery behind one of the most spectacular, head-spinning financial implosions in modern history.
Okay, so let's really dive into the sheer scale of what we are dealing with here. $1.75 billion. That is the staggering, almost incomprehensible financial stake at the center of this story. Now, to truly put that into perspective, you have to look at how the tech world usually works. Most successful tech startups, they have to scrape together maybe a few $100,000 in a pre-seed round. If they are incredibly lucky and they have a working software prototype with real people using it, maybe they raise a couple of million bucks. You have to prove yourself at every single step. But this mysterious venture, they completely bypassed all of that. They totally skipped the traditional Silicon Valley seed, Series A, Series B milestones, those crucial checkpoints that exist to prove whether a product actually works in the real world. They just sold their thesis, and the market handed them $1.75 billion in raw venture capital across two massive funding rounds. This wasn't a slow, careful build. This was an immediate, monstrous financial bet right from day one, locking investors into a high-stakes gamble of a truly unprecedented scale.
Now, you are probably wondering, how on earth did that money flow so freely without the usual checks and balances? Well, it's because the people asking for the cash weren't two kids coding in a cramped Stanford dorm room. They were absolute corporate royalty. We're talking about Jeffrey Katzenberg, the legendary visionary who literally steered Disney's animation renaissance with massive cultural hits like The Lion King, and then went on to co-found DreamWorks. And alongside him, Meg Whitman, the absolute powerhouse CEO who led eBay and Hewlett-Packard through massive eras of growth. They brought unlimited, top-tier Hollywood connections and unmatched corporate prestige to the table. Investors weren't just betting on a product, they were betting on a legacy. But here is the crazy part. Despite this absolutely flawless pedigree, despite having billions of dollars sitting in the bank, the reality dropped on them like an anvil. 180 days to zero. 6 months. That was the entire lifespan of this heavily funded, unstoppable giant once it actually hit the open market.
So this naturally begs the ultimate question, doesn't it? How do you actually physically burn through $1 billion in 180 days? Think about that for a second. You would almost have to be standing in the company parking lot, setting literal pallets of $100 bills on fire every single morning just to lose money at that kind of velocity. It almost defies the laws of corporate physics. And this right here is the central mystery of our explainer today. We are going to break down the exact financial mechanics, the profound, mind-boggling business missteps, and the fatal market miscalculations that managed to turn a $1.75 billion dream into a historic, monumental tech failure.
Section 1. Hollywood meets Silicon Valley. All right, let's pull back the curtain on who actually funded this thing. What's really fascinating here is the sheer, overwhelming institutional power and capital backing this unproven concept. This wasn't just a couple of risky angel investors throwing some spare change at a side bet. Look at these names. Global tech giants like Alibaba Group were in. The absolute titans of Wall Street, the people managing serious institutional wealth like Goldman Sachs and JPMorgan Chase, they were in. And then you have the biggest Hollywood studios on planet Earth, Disney, NBC Universal, Sony, Warner Media, all in. The fear of missing out, the FOMO, was so intense that these financial institutions poured $1 billion into the first round alone. They backed a theory entirely based on the founders' past track records, literally long before a single consumer ever downloaded the app to see if it was actually something people wanted.
So what exactly were these corporate giants investing their billions into? The big reveal. The company was called Quibi, short for Quick Bites, and their business thesis was bold, to put it mildly. Quibi was built strictly as a mobile-only streaming platform. No televisions, no laptops, no desktop computers, just the smartphone in your pocket. The idea was to feature short-form, episodic content under 10 minutes, expertly targeted at people waiting in line for coffee, riding the subway, or commuting on the train. And they were going to spend like it was a summer blockbuster. We are talking premium Hollywood budgets, paying up to $100,000 for a single minute of finished content. They signed massive stars, Steven Spielberg, Idris Elba, Kevin Hart. And the financial model designed to somehow recoup this massive spending spree, a paid monthly subscription. They were going to charge you $4.99 a month with advertisements or $7.99 a month to watch ad-free. It was a completely premium, highly monetized product specifically engineered for your daily commute.
And you know what? The corporate hype this model generated before launch was absolutely astronomical. Just look at this number, $150 million. That figure represents the massive first-year advertising inventory that Quibi sold out entirely. And they sold it to major blue-chip brands like Google, PepsiCo, and Walmart. Wall Street and Madison Avenue were totally, 100% convinced this was the next big thing. From a pure business-to-business sales perspective, Quibi was a colossal, undeniable financial success before day zero. But here's the harsh truth of the tech world. B2B sales and investor hype mean absolutely nothing if the actual everyday consumer, the person on the street, doesn't show up to use the product.
Section 2. The Premium Product Trap.
To justify asking consumers for that premium monthly price tag, Quibi's leadership decided to lean heavily into a highly expensive, patented engineering gimmick that they called Turnstyle. Turnstyle was designed to allow viewers to seamlessly shift between portrait and landscape video orientations on their phones. It was kind of a neat trick. If you held your phone vertically, you saw one edit, maybe focusing on a character's face. Turn your phone sideways, and the video immediately flawlessly reframed to a widescreen edit, perfectly stitched together without any of those annoying black bars. From a technical standpoint, it was incredibly smooth engineering, but here is the massive, glaring financial problem. To make this feature actually work, every single scene of every single show had to be shot, directed, and edited twice. It absolutely skyrocketed their already bloated production costs. And worse, it just didn't solve a core user need. Nobody out there was desperately crying out for simultaneous horizontal and vertical viewing. It ended up being a wildly expensive technological solution desperately looking for a consumer problem.
So, this brings us to a crucial point. Quibi built a premium product in a completely locked box, and in doing so, they totally ignored the reality of the modern mobile economy. Think about what they were asking. Quibi wanted you to pay a monthly subscription for premium Hollywood content that you were literally barred from sharing. You couldn't even take a screenshot of a funny moment to text your friend. The executives thought they were competing with premium services like Netflix and HBO, but they weren't. If you are a mobile-only app trying to capture spare minutes of attention, your direct competitors are TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And what are those platforms? They are entirely free. They are user-generated, they are highly viral, and they have an infinitely shareable design. Quibi was trying to charge hard-earned money for a closed, restrictive ecosystem while competing directly against free, organic, massively viral platforms for the exact same mobile attention.
There is a fundamental economic law of modern internet businesses that we really need to highlight here. It's the unshareable product trap. It's simple to state. If your product gives users no way to bring in other users, then you have to buy every single customer yourself forever. That is a customer acquisition cost, or CAC, that absolutely no amount of venture funding can outrun. Katzenberg was operating on old Hollywood reflexes. He wanted to protect the asset. He wanted to stop piracy at all costs. So the app actively blocked screenshots, it actively blocked video casting at launch. But by doing this, they deliberately destroyed the cheapest, most effective growth engine on the entire internet: organic user sharing, meme culture, and word-of-mouth marketing. Because you couldn't tweet a clip of a Quibi show, Quibi had to pay millions upon millions in marketing to acquire every single user out of their own extremely deep pockets.
Section 3. Launching into a lockdown.
Now, having a fundamentally flawed product strategy is dangerous on its own, but when you combine it with the absolute worst macroeconomic timing in modern history, that is how you get a historic financial catastrophe. Let's trace this timeline to really understand the sheer bad luck mixed with stubborn execution. The company was founded back in August 2018. They spent a solid year and a half burning through cash to build the app and film all of this incredibly expensive content. In January 2020, they threw a massive glitzy presentation at the Consumer Electronics Show. The hype was peaking. And then, the official app launch date was set in stone, April 6, 2020. I want you to really think about where the global economy and daily human life was on April 6, 2020. The platform launched exactly as the global pandemic locked the entire world down. The daily commute, the subway rides, waiting in line at the coffee shop, the exact on-the-go transitory moments that Quibi was entirely designed, budgeted, and built to fill, instantly vanished from human existence.
And this right here perfectly highlights the tragic irony of their massive launch. Quibi was a mobile-only app built exclusively for people on the go, launched at the precise moment in history when hundreds of millions of people were permanently confined to their living rooms. They were sitting just feet away from massive, high-definition flat-screen TVs. And remember that unshareable, lockdown product design we talked about? Because the app actively blocked television casting capabilities at launch to protect their precious mobile exclusivity, users couldn't even throw the shows up onto their big screens using Apple TV or Chromecast. Quibi completely failed to adapt to a user base that suddenly had unlimited free time, but absolutely zero desire to stare at a tiny phone screen while sitting on a comfortable living room couch.
Section 4. 6 months to shutdown. Following that massive April launch, the cold, hard, unforgiving financial reality quickly set in. Quibi had heavily promoted a very generous 90-day free trial to get people in the door. And it sort of worked at first. They got an initial bump, a couple million downloads from curious people who were stuck at home with nothing else to do. But giving away a free trial is not a sustainable business model. The sheer scale of the financial miss when those trials ended was staggering. Quibi's internal financial projections targeted 7.4 million paying subscribers in their first year. That was the vital make-or-break metric needed to justify their $1.75 billion valuation and those massive ongoing content budgets. But the actual number? As those generous 90-day free trials expired over the summer, the catastrophic conversion rates left them with only 500,000 paying users. 0.5 million. They missed their primary business target by nearly 7 million subscribers. The churn rate was absolutely brutal. Consumers watched the free content, realized they could get vastly more entertaining viral content for completely free on YouTube and TikTok, and simply deleted the app from their phones.
The financial descent that followed was terrifyingly fast. It gives you whiplash just looking at it. In April 2020, they get 1.7 million early downloads driven by lockdown curiosity and wildly expensive Super Bowl ads. By May 2020, just 1 month later, the app free falls to 125th place in the App Store rankings. The bottom just falls out. By June 2020, the panic truly sets in at headquarters, and voluntary executive pay cuts are implemented to stem the rapid, out-of-control cash burn. And then, the final blow. On October 21, 2020, the shutdown is formally announced to the world. The rapid descent from a billion-dollar, unstoppable super startup launch, down to executive pay cuts, and ultimately to a total, fatal shutdown, it took a mere 6 months of brutal, unforgiving market reality.
Section 5. The final balance sheet.
Let's look at the ultimate financial fallout and the unprecedented liquidation of this high-profile startup. What actually happens to the balance sheet when a company with this much cash and this much custom intellectual property just unplugs the servers? Well, Jeffrey Katzenberg later made a statement that I think is absolutely crucial for any business student, entrepreneur, or investor to internalize. He said there was no question that keeping us going was just going to spend a whole lot more money without any value to show for it. In a surprisingly rare display of swift defeat in Silicon Valley, a place where founders usually pivot endlessly until the very last investor cent is gone, the leadership actually opted to responsibly return the remaining cash to investors rather than slowly bleed the company dry. They looked at the data, they realized the core product market fit was broken beyond any possible repair, and they made the mature financial decision to pull the plug rather than throw good money after bad.
But even with that mature decision, the final balance sheet is absolutely staggering to look at. Think about the opening balance when they started. $1.75 billion raised from the world's most elite investors, plus another $150 million in guaranteed corporate ad sales. We are talking about nearly $2 billion of theoretical, highly hyped value. And the final liquidation just a few months later, Quibi sold its entire proprietary content library, over 75 original shows featuring A-list celebrities that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to produce, to Roku for less than $100 million. It showcases an astronomical loss of value. They sold a brand new, incredibly premium intellectual property library for literal pennies on the dollar, just to recoup whatever tiny financial scraps they could for their completely humiliated investors.
Which brings us to the ultimate lesson of the Quibi saga. It's a question we all have to ask ourselves. Does unlimited capital actually guarantee product market fit, or does it just accelerate the scale of the failure? In Quibi's case, having almost $2 billion actually hurt them. It allowed them to completely skip the crucial, gritty, difficult startup steps of testing, validating, and actually listening to the organic market. They bought the best talent, they built the smoothest tech, and they ran the biggest Super Bowl ads. But at the end of the day, money cannot buy organic user demand. It cannot force people to share a product that is fundamentally designed in a locked box. I want you to leave with this final thought. In business, capital is just fuel. But if your rocket is fundamentally pointed directly at the ground, adding $1 billion of fuel just makes the resulting crater that much bigger. Can capital ever truly buy organic user demand? Think about that the next time you see a startup raise a massive round of funding before day one. Thanks for diving into this with me, and I'll see you next time on The Explainer.